Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to take the opportunity just to acknowledge yourself, sir, as the Speaker, and thank you for the call. Mr. Speaker, this part of the bill, this committee stage, is about reducing the compliance cost on business. And I, at this stage, want to acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalziel, because of the work that she did in reducing compliance costs on business. She introduced the bill, Mr. Chairman, on the 9th of September 2008. They say that imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and Leanne Dalziel, Mr. Chairman, can be well pleased that Rodney Hyde has taken up this bill and progressing it through, albeit without any consultation at all. Now, Mr. Chairman, this bill is the result of 15 months of careful consultation between government agencies and over 200 businesses. And that speaks volumes about the consultation process that the former Minister, Leanne Dalziel, undertook to ensure that the whole issue of compliance costs was adhered to. I remember some years back, Mr. Speaker, actually introducing a bill to this Parliament, a private member's bill. It was called the Paperwork Reduction Bill. And the whole idea of that bill was to actually reduce the cost of compliance to small business. And at the time, the media made light of the fact that members had to produce 21 copies of their submissions in order for that bill to go forward. But the whole thing was concerned about the efficiency and the productivity of an organisation. And that is where Leanne Dalziel needs to be recognised for the work that she did. There was also the Productivity Council Bill, Mr. Speaker, in 1989. I see it's 21 years later that the National Party have decided to actually do something about it. But this whole piece of legislation, Mr. Chairman, after 15 months of consultation between government and agencies, is finally starting to happen. And that's due in no small part to the work that our Minister did when she was in office. And the whole thing, Mr. Chairman, it's a broad view that looks at the anomalies, the inconsistencies and the duplication across the government's regulatory framework. As well as correcting errors, the review aimed to develop ways of ensuring new rules were efficient for a business perspective. And I can remember in the South Island some years ago visiting a small business, talking about the whole issue of compliance, and I said, hey, we're going to look at this issue. And the guy was in his office, I think it was in Winton, he was in his office, he was doing paperwork, and he threw it all in the air. He says, thank goodness for that, because this whole issue of compliance is a long-standing grievance for small business. And Mr. Chairman, I put it to you that it will continue to be a long-standing grievance for small business because of the amount of time and effort required in adhering to government regulations. And so again, Leanne Dalziel needs to be recognised and complimented for that. Mr. Chairman, I want to quote Leanne Dalziel. She said this: "The bill is an important part of the government's overall effort to ensure that all our regulation is necessary. Our regulatory frameworks as a whole must be of the highest quality if our businesses are to compete internationally and be as innovative and productive as possible." And that's certainly the whole aim of this bill, and that is one of the reasons why the opposition will be supporting this piece of legislation. Mr. Chairman, businesses are frustrated at having to provide the same information over and over again to different categories. And that today is still one of the problems that we have, and one would hope that this legislation will go some way to rectifying that problem. When in office, Mr. Speaker, we also launched a 2-year trial of a business cost calculator in order to quantify the compliance costs of regulation. And you yourself, Mr. Chairman, when you were the opposition's spokesperson for small business, I guarantee that one of the things that you would have got from small business is the issue of compliance. It's an age-old issue. This bill attempts to do something about it, and I again want to acknowledge the work that my colleague did in bringing this legislation to Parliament. She's to be commended and congratulated. And Mr Chairman, I know that that also goes some way for the work that you too did when you were the opposition spokesperson for small business.
Charles Chabal.